Next, let's proceed with a statement of cash flow presentation. So we have two approaches, the direct method and the indirect method. So when we say direct method, this lists the cash amounts received and paid by the company. So from the word itself, class, it is direct because when you scrutinize the SCF using this method, you can immediately see that this certain transaction is for a collection of cash or for purchase of equipment or payments of operating expenses. So for this approach class, this is a user-friendly approach since direct naman kayong pagka-state sa mga transactions ani nga financial statement, so dali ra kayo ni siya masabtan sa mga user nga nagbasa ani niya. And then we also have our indirect method. So here, the presentation of cash flows from operating activities starts with net income, and then it is adjusted with non-cash expenses, and then changes in the working capital. So later on class, I will explain this to you further kay medyo dili kayo masabtan ihang definition no if ato lang ni siyang basahon. So later class, mas masabtan ninyo. And then we also have the presentation of cash flows from investing and financing activities. It works the same way as that of the direct method. So later class, makita ni nato ha kung unsay gipasabot ani niyang indirect method. So let's have an illustration for our direct method. Okay, our problem states Reed established his own service company. He invested $1 million to open the business and purchased some computer equipment worth $350,000 and office furniture worth $70,000. During the year, $800,000 revenues were earned, $300,000 of which were on account. Salaries paid to employees amounted to $250,000. Office rent payment is $100,000 and utilities paid amounted to $40,000. Receivables collected amounted to $120,000. Since the business is doing well, Reed planned for an expansion to which he borrowed from BPI at $2.5 million to be paid within 5 years. He paid interest expense for the year at $25,000. Reed withdrew $90,000 for personal use. At the time when the carrying value of the office furniture is $50,000, Reed sold it for $80,000. So in ani nga problem class, unsao man nato pag buhat og statement of cash flow aron dali-dali ni siya class, medyo easier sa ato ang part. Ang atong buhaton is to make a T account for our cash. No kay ang SCF concerned raman ta ani sa cash receipts and cash payments. So let's make a T account here. So ato lang ipang consider ang mga gipang tabi sa problem class. So let's start with investment by owner at 1 million, and then there is also a purchase of equipment at 350,000. Then we have cash received from customers at 500,000. Nganong 500,000 money class? So as you can see here, you have 800,000 for your revenues. And then ingon nga ri nga 300,000 daw kay on account. So meaning class, si customer nato ani gibayad siya og cash for the rendering of the services. So mao ni siya ang ato ang cash revenue is at 500,000. And then we have purchase of furniture at 70,000. Then we have collection of our receivables at 120,000. We have payment of salaries at 250,000. And then we have our loan proceeds at 2.5 million. Nganong ato man gidebit ang loan proceeds class kay naka-receive man ta ani og kwarta in return sa ato ang giloan, no? And then we credit our payment for rent at 100,000. Then we have the sale of our furniture at 80,000. So, ang atong gi-consider ani class kay cash money nga T-account. So, pila may halin nato sa furniture, no? Pila may pagbaligya nato niya ani. So, mao ni siya nga 80,000 ang ato ang gigamit nga amount. And then, we have the payment of our utilities at 40,000. Then, payment of our interest at 25,000. Then, cash withdrawal by the owner at 90,000. Then, we total our debits and credits class. So, total debits at 4.2 million, total credits at 925,000. So, we have our cash and balance at a debit of 3,275,000. So, current class, nga nanatay i-account for our cash, pwede na tayo proceed in making our statement of cash flow. So, sa ato ang i-account class, atong tanawon ani nila, atong i-analyze, asa ani nila ang operating, investing, and financing. So, diha ra gyud naka-focus ang ato ang statement of cash flow class. If kahibaw ganita mo identify, kahibaw ta mo analyze ani nila nga transactions, dali ra gyud kayo ang pagbuhat nato sa ato ang statement of cash flow direct method. So, first, let's start with the heading. So, we have read company statement of cash flow, and for the year ended December 31, 2019. Then, let's start with cash flows from operating activities. So, unsa ganining operating activities class? This is our revenue generating activities. And where do we found this? In our statement of comprehensive income and statement of financial position, current assets, and current liabilities. So, sa ato ang T-account class, asa man ani nila ang operating activities. So, we have the cash received from service revenue of 500,000, our collection of receivables at 120,000, our payment of salaries at 250,000. So, class, basta mga payment gani or nagpagawas ta og kwarta, ato na lang itagaan-daan og negative na sign, no? Pwede siya minus na sign, class. Pwede pod kanang iyon ani, open and close parentheses. So, meaning ani niya, class, payment ni siya, ha? Ato ni siyang i-deduct. Okay? And then, we have our payment of rent at 100,000. Payment of utilities at 40,000, and then our payment of interest. Then, we sum up all our operating activities. We get our net cash from operating activities at 205,000. Then, we proceed with our cash flows from investing. So, asa ganini nato makita ang atong investing activities in our SFP non-current asset portion. So, sa ato ang T-account class, asa man ang nag-affect ani sa ato ang non-current asset. So, kanino? Kining sale of furniture at 80,000, the proceeds of our sale. And then, we have the purchase of equipment. So, kani siya class, nganong naani siya negative na sign, kay ug kung mag-purchase ta og equipment, di ba, magpagawas man ta og cash, provided this is a cash purchase, no? Then, we have our purchase of furniture at 70,000. So, the net cash from our investing activity is 340,000. So, dili ra ta mag-uol class, ha, if makakita ta nga hala nag-negative lagi ni ang iyang investing activities, no? Meaning ra ana class, daghan gud og gi-purchase si business nga mga long-term investments. So, dili ra mag-uol. Mao ra nay pasabot ana niya class. Okay? Sa akong mga gipang-review nga financial statements class, makabantay pud ko ani niya, normal gyud ni siya nga ang kining cash flow sa investing pirmi gyud siya nag-negative yun ani kay sige purchase ang mga companies og long-term investments. Then, we proceed with our cash flows from financing activities. So, unsa gani ni siya sa financing? We have our non-current liabilities and owner's equity section. So here we have our investment by owner at 1 million. And then we have our loan proceeds at 2.5 million. Then we have the withdrawal by the owner at 90,000. So our net cash from financing activities is 3,410,000. Then we just sum this up, class, to arrive at our net cash flow. So 205,000 less 340,000 plus 3,410,000. So our net cash flow is 3,275,000. Then after which we add our cash at the beginning of the year. So since in this problem class, pag ura man gi-establish ang business, wala pa siya beginning cash balance. But in our succeeding problems class, or sa problems na inyong encounter, if given gani ang beginning balance sa cash, i-add na nato ha to arrive at our cash end. So our cash end is the same at 3,275,000. So this is the same amount class that we arrive in our balancing figure for our cash T account. So in ana ra na siya class, no? Medyo sayon ra ang direct method. And then if you can see, no, direkta ra jud kaayo siya, no, masabtan ra dayon siya if imong basahon cash received, payment of interest, no, medyo sayon ra gyud ni ang direct method class, provided nga ato ang mahibaw-an ug mag-classify nato ang lain-lain nga transactions under operating, investing, and financing activities. Then next class, we have our indirect method operating activities. So, unsa ganito atong indirect method class? Mura man to, unsa man to kadaghan ba atong mga unidentified nga mga phrases. So, inani ra niyo siyang indirect method class. Mag-start siya sa net income or net loss. And then, i-add na to ang non-cash expenses. So, ang example sa non-cash expenses class, depreciation from our property, plant, and equipment, or amortization ba karon gikan sa atong mga intangibles, or depletion. Kining depletion class, nag-involve ni siya og mga natural resources. So, higher accounting pa ni nato ma-meet kining si depletion. Okay, then, kung ano man di ay nga ato man ni siyang i-add balik sa ato ang net income or net loss. Kay, di ba class, ato ang statement of cash flows, cash naman ang ato ang gipangita, di ba? So, kani siya class, di ba, if mag-record ta og depreciation expense, di ba, wala man tay gi-involve ani niya nga cash transaction. It's just a debit to our depreciation expense and then a credit to our accumulated depreciation. So, mao ni siya class, since wala man ta nag-involve og cash ani, ato ni siyang i-add balik sa ato ang net income or net loss for the period. The next, we add or we deduct also our non-cash revenues. Examples of which class is our loss on sale and then also our gain on sale. So, makapangutana siguro tanong nga, di ba ma'am, if mag-recognize ta og loss o gain on sale, mag-involve man siya og cash? Yes, class, mag-involve siya og cash. But then, ato naman i-consider ang cash nga ato ang na-receive ani or nawala sa ato ang investing activity sa ubos sa ato ang statement of cash flow. Maong since considered man siya nga sa ato ang investing activity class, the whole proceeds of the equipment we do not consider this in our operating activity. Mao ni siya class nga i-add na to balik ang loss on sale or i-deduct ang gain on sale. Okay? Nasabtan ra? So, ang total ani niya class is our operating income before working capital changes. Kay bawo na ba mo class unsa ning working capital? Covered man ata ni siya sa inyong business finance, no? The working capital. But for the sake sa wala kahibaw class, ang kining working capital, this covers all your current assets. Kahibaw naman tano, unsa ng mga current assets. And then, less your current liabilities. So, mo na siya class, ang result ana niya is your working capital. So, maingon gani tag working capital changes class nga ri nga portion. So, ang ato alang hisgutan is the current asset and the current liability of the company. But we do not consider the cash. Okay? So, here, we add all the decrease in our current asset. Why labot si cash class? Okay? Okay. Ato, ngano ato mang i-add balik si decrease in current assets. Kay, diba class, if natay decrease atong current asset, for example, ang ato ang accounts receivable, if mo decrease gani na ato ang accounts receivable class, meaning, nakadawat na ta og cash. So, mao na siya class nga atong i-add balik ang anything nga maka-decrease ato ang current asset. And then, we deduct all our increases in current assets other than cash. So, nga naman po ni class nga kung increase gani kay atong i-deduct, diba class, if magkadaghan ang ato ang accounts receivable, meaning ana class, wata nakadawat og cash payment sa atong mga sale of goods or sa ato ang pag-render of service. Mao na siya class nga atong i-deduct anything na nakapa-increase ato ang current assets. Then, we add the increase in our current liabilities. Kung ano man ni ma'am nga, nidaghan mahinon atong utang ani ma'am, gi-add mahinon nato ato ang kuan, ato ang current liabilities. Ang meaning lang ani niya class, so nagkadaghan atong utang, meaning wa tay gipagawas nga kwarta no. Mao ni siya class nga in any increases in our current liabilities atong gi-add balik. And then ato pong gi-deduct ang anything nga maka-decrease atong current liabilities. Kay syempre class, any decrease in our current liabilities meaning nagpagawas ta og kwarta, so it is also a decrease in our cash. So, ana na siya class. And then after which, we can then get our net cash flow from our operating activities. So, after ani niya class, musunod na dayon ang cash flow from our investing activities and financing activities na same lang ang iyahang noun class sa ato ang direct method. So, sa indirect method class, ang nalahi ra gyud kinirang operating activities nga portion. And then, timan-an lang ni nato giunsa nato pag-arrive sa ato ang net cash flow from operating activities. So, kani siya class, si plus ug si minus. So, ato lang ni siyang timan-an pirmi para sakto ang atong net cash flow from operating activities. So here class, we have Sue Company who has already been in business for 2 years and has provided us with a comparative statement of financial position for December 31, 2019 and 2020. We are required to prepare for the statement of cash flow for the year ended December 31, 2020 using the indirect method. And there are other information that is made available. It states here that the company has a net income of 405,000 and then the owner sold the land with an original cost of 850,000 for 1.5 million and bought a new one at 1 million. And also, she purchased an additional machinery in 2020 and also borrowed from a bank to finance their planned future expansion, which borrowing is payable in 5 years with no interest. So let's start. So how are we going to solve the problem, class? First that we need to do is to analyze the changes in the entity's financial position. And how are we going to do that? We only have to compare the 2020 to the 2019 transaction, okay? The changes in the transaction, and then we put a remark on what kind of change is that. Okay, let's start with our asset. So here we have our cash. At 2020, it is at 2.5 million. At 2019, it is at 1.4 million. So there is a change of 1.1 million, which what we can see in our net cash flow. So later on, class, ma-check man nato no ug kung sakto ba, balanse ba ang ato ang statement of cash flow by checking if ang ato ang net cash flow ni coincide ba siya sa changes ato ang cash. And also, we can also check our cash balance and if it is the same with our cash end here in 2020. So next, we have our accounts receivable. So at 2020, it's 1.2 million. At 2019, it is at 900,000. So we have a change of 300,000. So this is an increase in our accounts receivable. And then we have our inventory. 2020, it's at 1,350,000. At 2019, it is at 1,750,000. So there is a decrease in our inventory at 400,000. Then we have our prepaid expenses. So at 2020, it's at 75,000, while at 2019, it's at 150,000. So again, we have a decrease in our prepaid expenses. Then we have our land. At 2020, it is at 1 million. At 2019, it is at 850,000. So there is a change of 150,000. So this is caused by the sale of our land at 1.5 million. And then there is a gain of sale of 650,000. And then we also purchased a new land at 1 million. So this information, class, is available in the additional information I've cited earlier, no? So sometimes we have to check if there are additional information given in the problem. Okay, so next we have our machinery. So at 2020, it's at 1,980,000. In 2019, it is at 1,230,000. So there is a change of 750,000. And then earlier, if you can recall, there was a mention that the company purchased a new machinery. So mao ni siya, class. Ang iyang difference ani mao ni siya ang i-purchase nga machinery. And then we have an accumulated depreciation for our machinery. At 2020, it is at negative 580,000. At 2019, it is at 400,000. So we have a change of negative 180,000 as depreciation of our machinery in 2020. So our total assets, it's at 2020, it's at 7,525,000. At 2019, it is at 5,880,000. So next, let's proceed with our liabilities and owner's equity section. So for our accounts payable in 2020, it's at 950,000. In 2019, it is at 670,000. So we have a change of 280,000. There is an increase in our accounts payable. Next, for our accrued expenses, at 2020, it's at 70,000. At 2019, it is at 110,000. So we have a decrease in accrued expenses of 40,000. And then we have our borrowings, their long-term liabilities at 1 million for 2020. We stated earlier that this borrowing is for a future expansion. And then our capital at 2020 is at 5,505,000, and then at 20 it's at 5,100,000. So the difference of 405,000 is the net income for 2020. It is the same figure stated in the additional information earlier. Then, for our total liabilities and owner's equity, it's the same with our total assets. So, from here, we can now move on into creating our statement of cash flow. So, class, since naa naman tay changes, no? And then, ato na siyang na-identify unsa ni nga mga changes, ready na ta para makabuhat sa atong statement of cash flow using the indirect method. Pero syempre, ato siya nang itangkil ato ang cheat sheet class, labi nagdili pa kay tayo anak ka familiar, no? Hindi pa nato ma-master. Pero if na-master na ganyan nato class, itsopera na lang ni nato ato ang cheat sheet. But for now, let's keep this in creating our SDF. So, syempre, mag-start yung tano og heading. So, here we have a Sue Company statement of cash flow for the year ended December 31, 2020. And then, let us start with our cash flows from operating activities. So, unsa ganito yung mag-una class? Our net income or net loss. And then, here, gi-state man nga naatay 405,000 nga net income. So, mag-start ani niya class, ha? Net income at 405,000. And then, we add our non-cash expenses. So, here class, naaba tayo depreciation? Yes, na ano? So, we add our depreciation expense of 180,000. And then, napabaylain? Maura na siya, no? Sige, padayon. Then, we add or deduct our non-cash revenue. So, nabatay loss on sale diya or gain on sale. So, naatay gain on sale of land, no, at 650,000. So, since this is a gain, we deduct this here. So, less gain on sale of land. So, now, we have our operating income before working capital changes. So, let's proceed. We have our working capital changes here. So, we have our increase in AR. So, since this is an increase in current asset, atong gi-deduct. And then, we have decrease in inventory. So, since this is a decrease in our current asset, atong gi-add. Next, decrease in prepaid expenses. So, same, no? Atong gi-add. Then, increase in accounts payable. So, for increase in current liabilities, we add them. And then, we have a decrease in accrued expenses. So, we deduct 40,000. So, kanira man siya, no, ang naka-affect sa ato ang working capital. Mora man ni sila nga mga transactions ang under sa ato ang current assets and current liabilities. So, here, we can now have our net cash flow from operating activities at 350,000. Then, we have our cash flows from investing activities. So, we have the sale of our land at 1.5 million. And then, we also purchase a land at 1 million. And then, we also purchased a machinery at 750,000. So, our net cash flow from investing activity is negative 250,000. Kung sa gani pasabot ani class, ni ani no, mas daghan tag kwarta nga i-invest, gigamit nato as purchase ug mga long-term investments. Then, we have our cash flows from financing activities. So we have our borrowings for future expansion at 1 million. And then wala man tay hisgutan nga rin nga additional investment or withdrawal by the owner. So, maura ni siya ang atong ibutang class sa cash flow from financing. So, if na question class, no, how much is the net cash flow from financing activities? Dali ra kay tak answer, no? 1 million. Kanang wala na kailangan i-compute. So, diri-diritso na manginanang a questions class na diritso ra gyud isa ra ka item. Pasok na dayon. So, here, our net cash flow from financing activity, it's at 1 million. And then we sum up our cash flow activities to arrive at our net cash flow of 1.1 million. And then we add our cash beginning at 1.4 million kay given man is atong problem class. So we arrive at our cash end at December 31 at 2.5 million. So if ato ni i-cross-reference atong problem kaganiha class, no, ang ato ang changes atong cash ning coincide ra gyud siya sa ato ang net cash flow. So sakto ra ato ang pag-compute class. Ma-check man nato, no? As well as our cash end. So mao po na siya class. That's a way of checking if we have our accounts in balance. Okay, naana ra na siya class ang pag-present sa statement of cash flow using the indirect method. Pero kung ano, medyo libog siya, no? Kung bag-o pa, para kailangan siya ka ani niya og practice para usahay no libog kay ni kining decrease in current asset. Decrease na gani i-add pag yun no unsa man yung taon ni oy. Increase i-minus. So, ako ang buhaton ani sa una class. Ang ako na lang timan-an kay ang kining sa asset nga portion kay kuan ni siya kanang binali sa liabilities. So if na ni liabilities, check lang dayon ako ay balian ni niya. Okay. Pero what if no walay liabilities? Sao na lang gyud. So mao ni siya class nga manantiman-an ni nato ang ato ang formula nga ri sa ato ang indirect method.